If you're a Cleveland Browns fan looking for a break from the emotional roller coaster that is the price we pay from loving then hating our Browns, then a big welcome to Cleveland Browns Anonymous, a group therapy podcast to help you survive the season. So let's start our meeting.
Hi, everybody. It's Brook and Mike, Cleveland Browns. Another coach bites the dust. And no surprise, Coach Stefanski is out. And that's what we're going to start talking about. And what do we think goes from here? So, Brook, I'm going to let you lead off with just general thoughts.
Yeah, I think, well, first, I'm glad that it happened soon. It didn't drag out a couple days. I didn't get a chance to listen to what Jimmy Haslam said because he spoke this morning when I had some downtime. I checked some of the highlights, and he definitely sounded like he was pretty pissed off. It just looked like he knew he made the right call. And reading the tea leaves from what he said, first off, Andrew Berry is going to be leading the search for the next head coach. It looks like Jim Schwartz and Tommy Rees will both be candidates.
I thought he ruled. I thought I've heard snippets because it's Monday. We're back to work. So we wanted to get this podcast out. We'll flesh this out. We may have another one later in the week, folks. I heard Tony Grossi ask him, and Jim Schwartz was ruled out. Or maybe he just said, well, we haven't made that decision yet. I don't know. We got to go through the Rudy rule and the whole process.
Yeah, Jimmy Haslam didn't say he was not a candidate, but Andrew Berry is actually talking right now. And Andrew Berry said that both Schwartz and Rees will be, if they're interested, will both be given the opportunity to
good
interview.
Yeah, I would have been just super depressed if Haslam had ruled out Jim Schwartz. I mean, that would have just been that would have been a real bummer.
Well, reading the tea leaves again, when Jimmy was asked, who his ideal candidate would be, he basically said he wants someone who basically is an offensive genius.
I thought Stefanski was the offensive genius.
Well, he clearly wasn't given his record, but he wants someone who's a great leader and someone who is very smart and creative on one side of the ball.
Okay, looks like he's making the same mistakes they always make. But look, we've been banging the desk, right, Brook, for the last 6-7 weeks that Stefanski needs to go. That this is a head coaching and a culture problem, not a scheme problem. And I'm seeing, thankfully, some of the media out there starting to pick that up, that this is a head coaching problem. I read, and of course, we're just going to get tons of commentary, 2-time coach of the year. Yeah, the Browns are pretty dysfunctional, blah, 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 blah. Which is, there's a lot of truth to that. But I think the problem, as we've said, is that Kevin Stefanski, unless he's been just in a straitjacket with the Browns, has not demonstrated to me that he has the ability to be a head coach. I mean, all you got to do is look at Indiana football. Curt Cignetti. Is his first name Curt?
Yeah.
I went back a couple years ago. In fact, Mark, I'd like you to put in Curt Cignetti's opening press conference 2 years ago when he just says, hey, everywhere I go, I win. I hate losing. Everywhere I go, I win.
You talked about players needing to have a why. What's your why?
I like winning. And I hate losing. And he was with James Madison. He was with a small school that was competing with James Madison. Then he got moved into Eli. These were all programs that were like the Browns, just terrible. And he goes in, and within the first year, turns them around. Look what he did to Indiana last year. So, Jimmy, why don't you get your brain trust and study where are the Curt Cignettis out there that all they do is win? What's in that water? What's the secret combination that makes a winning head coach? And it has nothing to do with offense and defense. Your thoughts, Brook?
Well, Jimmy definitely, I'm trying to find it, in what Jimmy said, he definitely was like, I mean, he basically kind of said like what you've been saying the past couple months. He said, hey, I like Kevin. He's a nice guy,
Super great guy.
A great guy. This was a tough day, but at the end of the day, he did not do a good job. The development of our players was not good enough. The in-game decisions were terrible. The strategies leading into the games were bad. And, he vowed that, I cannot put that product on the field next year from what you guys have seen the past 2 seasons. So
right.
I think Jimmy definitely, and like I said, I think he knew he made the right call. And I think where we go from here, I'm leaning towards, I know a lot of the defensive players have said they would support Jim Schwartz. They love Jim Schwartz. I wouldn't be surprised if that happens. I would be shocked if it's Tommy Rees.
Yeah.
But I just have this feeling that it's either going to be a culture leadership pick or it's going to be some young offensive guy.
Yeah, like Pat Shermer type. No.
Like a young guy.
Again, young guy. Well, Pat Shermer was a young guy. He got the Cleveland Browns job, and it was a disaster. How many young, bright offense? Who was the guy that was on the Chargers before Harbaugh took over? Before Jim Harbaugh took over, they had a bright guy. He was so bright, he was dumb.
Well, then you got guys like Liam Cohen. When they hired him, they were like, "Oh, there goes Jacksonville."
Yeah.
Making a stupid pick, and now they're won their division and are in.
No, he was a good. But again, let's break down what Cignetti's doing in Indiana. What Ara Parcells did. Here's 2 bookend coaches separated by 60 years. Parcells comes in 64. Notre Dame. All he did was win at Northwestern. Northwestern, he came in, he turned it around. Bo Schembechler did that with Michigan, which was just in decline. They were becoming a doormat in the Big Ten in the late 60s. But let's look at Parcells, what he did, and what Cignetti did. These guys emphasized the fundamentals. They weren't jumping off sides. They weren't confused. These were well-coached teams. The second thing that both Cignetti and Parcells had, and you could say the same thing with Vince Lombardi, okay? They were able to recognize and develop talent. You could say Bill Parcells. Terry Pluto's going on and on about Shedeur being a 5th-round pick. Bill Walsh, Joe Montana. Montana was a 5th-round pick. Kenny Anderson and the Bengals. When Walsh was there, they picked him in the 3rd round. Bart Starr, 15th-round pick from Alabama. Becomes Hall of Famer. You got Parcells coming in 64. He takes the third string quarterback, John Heward, puts him as the starting quarterback. He takes a wide receiver who was buried on the bench named Jack Snow. And Notre Dame goes from 2-11 or 2-10. They win the first 10 games and they lose to USC. Cignetti comes in. He's relentless on the fundamentals and the coaching. And look at this guy, Mendoza. Heisman Trophy winner, first round pick in the NFL. Where'd this guy come from? Whose last name's not Manning. Great coaches work on all levels. There's no special teams screw up. There's no in-game confusion. There's adjustments made after the first series or two. And then all they do is win. That is, and when you look at Kevin Stefanski, like a lot of these failed NFL coaches, first of all, Stefanski did not win that playoff game in Pittsburgh. He was in the basement watching that game. It was Alex Van Pelt. You look at Joe Woods, who got promoted to defensive coordinator after he got fired by the Broncos. And then he was a disaster with the Browns. How many games did he cost them? Flacco, Jets game, Chargers, confusion. And Stefanski did nothing. Special teams cost us a couple games this year. And yet I've got to listen to everybody, all these smart people in the media saying how Stefanski was dealt a bad hand. Thoughts, Brook?
Well, I think that in our roster, there's definitely a lot of holes, but it's not that bad. And I think Andrew Berry and Jimmy Haslam looked at the roster and said, we had a home run of a draft. We've got some really good young pieces. Our defense is probably top 3. We should not be 5-12. And
well, we should have won the Jets game, right? We should have won the first Bengals game if Stefanski had unleashed Flacco a little more.
It's kind of like it's pointless now to go back and say, should have won this. He got fired. A lot of these games that we should have won were his fault.
Vikings in London.
Shedeur should have been, probably number 2 on the depth chart. And kudos to Shedeur today when they asked him, the press asked him some questions, and he had a really great response where they were kind of, trying to get him to say something that he knew wasn't, shouldn't give an answer to. And he, I think it was Tony Grossi, and Shedeur kind of stopped him and said, hey, come on, that's sticky business stuff there. I'm not answering that. I think that whoever the next head coach is, that there's going to be obviously a lot of questions on the quarterback, because I think it's apparent that Andrew Berry and Jimmy Haslam think very highly of Shedeur, or at least are like, you know what, let's give him some weapons, give him an off season. Let's see what he's got. But I think you're going into next year with him as your starter, and I'd be fine with that.
Yeah, no, I really think they're looking at Shedeur and they're looking at Stefanski, and they're remembering how Stefanski handled Baker.
Oh yeah,
and they're saying we can't afford this, and how the team around Shedeur has so many bad coaching problems.
Hey, let's stop here. We got to pay some bills. 30 seconds.
and we'll be back.
Getting your house ready to sell, or you just need some basic repairs, and you can't get anybody to come out or even return your phone call. Then call Riley Painting and Contracting, your home mechanics, for all of your home repair needs, from electrical, plumbing, roof repairs, and getting your house ready to sell. 45 years in the business, a AAA on the Better Business Bureau, and we're on the preferred contractor list in Cleveland Heights and Shaker Heights. You can contact us by calling 216-371-8160 and leave a message, and guess what? We'll call you back.
Look at the Browns easily could have been 9-8. All right. Look at Pittsburgh with Aaron Rodgers. We had a better defense than Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's offense wasn't lighting things up. They just knew how to win. They've got a winning culture there. You know, Mike Tomlin's gotten some grief, but all he does is he doesn't win the Super Bowl unless he's got Big Ben. But the guy's always winning. The Browns easily could have been 9-8. Easily. They're the number one defense. And if you look at those last two games they won, especially the Bengals game, you know, there were some times in that game where I made mental notes. Like, Stefanski didn't go for it 4th and 3 at the Browns 50. They leaned on their defense. They played field position. Special teams played well, obviously. We made the winning field goal. We're winning extra points. There was no breakdowns in special teams. And they actually made adjustments in the second half. They moved to a hurry-up offense. I really like this running back, this Raheem, what's his last name?
Is it Sanders?
Oh, my God, that guy is relentless. You know, the thing about the new head coach is he's going to recognize guys like Raheem Sanders. Maybe he's going to get the most out of Jerry Jeudy. Maybe he's going to kick Njoku in the ass. All right? I wouldn't be. And Deshaun Watson's going to want to start next year, right? Is we going to have some coaches going to be mumbling like Kevin Stefanski, or going to simply say, we're not having an open quarter. Shedeur's our number one guy, period. All right? Deshaun's a backup. You need a coach who walks in there and you can hear his balls clanking. Sean Payton, Cignetti, Ara Parcells, Vince Lombardi, Bill Parcells, Andy Reid. Okay.
Just don't be shocked if it's some young offensive kid.
Well, if they go that route, you've got to ask one fundamental question. What is their track record of winning? That's what we have to see. What program did they come in and turn around?
I think what they're going to be looking at is not only that, but diving deeper is how that person developed their quarterback.
Or how they developed, maybe how they made people better around. Great coaches make their players better. They develop talent that other people don't see. Bill Walsh, Joe Montana, right? He takes these people. Yeah, he nailed the draft, which is crucial, but he'd sign free agents, Hacksaw Reynolds, and he'd get the most out of them. Same thing with Bill Parcells. You know, do you remember running back on the Jets named Curtis Martin?
No.
Curtis Martin led the league in rushing with the Jets under Parcells. Parcells saw something in Curtis Martin. Tony Romo didn't play for 2 years. Testaverde came in. Testaverde had Parcells knows how to get the most out of his players. So if you're getting a young coach, I don't mind if that young coach is a young Bill Cowher who took the special teams on the Browns under Marty Schottenheimer and made them an elite unit that was actually scoring points with the Ice Cube, McNeil, Gerald the Ice Cube McNeil. Look him up. You know, this guy's scoring touchdowns on punt returns. So, you know, and let me just, you know, we're just kind of freelancing here on this pod. But let me talk about Shedeur Sanders. I think we've got a winner here. Now, everybody's going on and on about primetime as dad, primetime this, and we got to deal with the primetime drama and all this, the big hat, the gold chain, and stuff like that. Let me tell you something. Shedeur has a mom and dad who go to church. Think about it. Shedeur's not a single parent kid. He's got a strong dad that he was raised with. And you see that in how he acts in games and how he acts post games in these press conferences. We have somebody that we can build around. And you got to ask yourself, Tommy Reese, is Stefanski have some of the straitjacket on Shedeur? Maybe vetoing plays that Tommy's calling? I love that play. What was it? 2nd and 1 or 3rd one, you know, less than a minute to go, where they went for Isaiah Bond.
Yeah, almost had that touchdown.
Thank you. Where are the long passes to just keep the defense honest? That's what we did when we beat Oakland or in Las Vegas. Hit a couple of long passes. All of a sudden, they're not putting 8 men in the box. And you got to wonder, Stefanski's brand of football, I'm sure Joe Flacco, when he came in 2 years ago, I'm sure he changed some of the plays at the line of scrimmage and just let it rip. I mean, you think about Stefanski winning Coach of the Year in 23. No, that's Joe Flacco time. Because up until then, they weren't going anywhere. Yeah, they had 5 different quarterbacks, but they went 5-1 under Flacco. And that's how they got in the playoffs. So I just hope we don't get some bright young coach who's got to learn how to be a head coach. We need a culture coach. I'm praying for Jim Schwartz. That's a no-brainer. He's got respect in the locker room, number 1 defense, etc.
Yeah, no, I think, you know, me and a lot of fans and a lot of players wouldn't, you know, be opposed to something like that. And, you know, if you're looking outside the organization and if you're looking at one of these defensive guys, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense because you've got a great defensive guy in the building already. But I don't know. I mean, I just keep going back to what Jimmy said today. And granted, it was a very short press conference. So you can go back and listen to it and go for a, you know, quick little walk around the block. But I mean, he kept going back to leadership and i.e. offense. So I don't know. We'll see. But hey, this was the right call. And I know I said this in other podcasts, but every time Jimmy's fired a head coach, it's been the right decision. So maybe the fact that he's putting Andrew Berry in charge of finding the next head coach, maybe it tells you that, you know, in past it was Jimmy and Jimmy's son-in-law and D, you know, and then you'd bring in the GM for the kind of round 2 interviews. But it definitely sounds like Andrew Berry has been given, you know, a lot of authority to pick whoever this next head coach is.
Well, you know what I keep thinking about? I think about Sam Rutigliano. Before you were born, Brook. Podcast listeners of a certain age, Riverboat Sam. And think about this. Sam Rutigliano took over the Browns in 1978. And within the second year, 1980, the Cardiac Kids under Brian Sipe won their division and lost a heartbreak game, famous red right, 88, 41 seconds to go. Oakland, which then went on to win the Super Bowl that year. And Rutigliano got Coach of the Year. 6 years later, he gets fired. 6 years later. And they were 1-7. He was fired. He was replaced by defensive coordinator Marty Schottenheimer. Defensive coordinator, who then went on to turn the Browns culture around. And one of the first things Marty Schottenheimer did was he cut their high-priced wide receiver that Sam Rutigliano had coddled for dropping passes. That sound familiar?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm hoping that history will repeat itself and that we're going to take a defensive coordinator, a culture changer in Jim Schwartz to take over the Browns with a big turnaround next year with a good draft, another great draft, and Shedeur working with Tommy Reese, working with a O-line. And let me just go off on another tangent with the O-line. I am not going to pillory Andrew Berry for that O-line because they went into that season thinking that DeJuan Jones, losing weight, getting in shape, would anchor their left tackle. And they were looking for Jack Conklin to return at right tackle. And both get hurt. Okay, but they went into it. You can say, well, why didn't they, they went into the season with the bad O-line. No, they didn't. They were thinking Conklin, who had a couple old all-pro seasons with the Browns, was going to come back. They talked Antonio to come back. Yeah. They had Wyatt Teller. They were deep at center. And, and they thought, yeah, we'll have Flacco and we'll develop the kids. That was their plan going in. And it all started falling apart. So, but that's where head coach comes in, folks. You're going to have injuries. Okay? You're going to have injuries. Just look at the Steelers. But the Browns should have been 9-8 this year with a competent head coach like Sean Payton. Look at Sean Payton and the Broncos. 2 years ago, they were the worst team in football. 2 years ago. They bring in Sean Payton and he turns it around. It's the head coach, stupid. It's not the quarterback. So, fingers crossed, Jim Schwartz. And you know what? Jim Schwartz turned around the Lions his second year. Look it up. And they had a terrible front office, terrible general manager. And he's got the top defense in the league. Innovative. He's taken play. He had guys injured. Did you see that corner who was covering Chase and T. Higgins? Forget his name.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think his last name was Ross.
Yeah. 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 Next man up, man. You're expected to play. They shut down the Bengals, who were just rolling. And they had Denzel and Carson Schwarzenegger out. Okay. Jim Schwartz, baby. So title of this is It's Jim Schwartz Time. Please. Mark, that's the title. Final thoughts, Brook?
No, we'll see. Yeah, I'd be fine with that. I'd be fine with Schwartz.
All right. We'll have another one later in the week as we digest what the tea leaves are showing in Berea. All right, everybody.
All right.
All right. Thanks, Brook. Talk later. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Cleveland Browns Anonymous podcast with Mike Riley. We have a lot more content on the way as we get this new podcast started. You can also check out some of our other podcasts like the Cleveland Real Estate Investor Podcast and other new ones that will start soon. On any platform that you find yourself listening to us on, feel free to leave us a like or comment or follow us. It always helps.